I want to chat with you a little bit about the state of the MIT Sloan School. That relates a little bit also to the state of MIT more broadly. This is a obviously brief and breezy summary of a few of the things that are happening at the school and a few of the measures of activity and outcomes. My goal is that there will be time for us to take and answer some questions, and I look forward to that. That's my favorite part. But before, I've got a couple slides to show you, not too many. Before we do that though, I just, the joke goes, before I give my talk, I'd like to say something. So I'd like to thank you for coming back and being with each other if you weren't in the last session. Also, for many of you on the reunion cycle of 5 years, it's been an interesting 5 years. And while we focus the state of the school on a sort of 2023 measure, if you will, it's been an interesting 5 years. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge with some thanks the work that this school as a community, and it was really as a community, did to bring us through the pandemic. And not a few of you, more than a few of you, were part of that in multiple ways. As you know, like other organizations, within a week and a half, we needed to pivot to doing all of the teaching that we did online. And then we quickly, before there was a vaccine, pivoted back to offering a set of our courses in person with masks for students and masks for faculty. All of the faculty who taught those courses did so as volunteers. Some of them were young and some were not. We also needed to rely on a staff, all volunteers, of about 75 people. Again, all of them volunteers, some of them young, many of them not, during a time when there were no vaccines. It allowed international students to come to the United States and be at MIT Sloan during that time, which wouldn't have been possible otherwise, because you can't get a student visa if it's not an in-person program. And generally, our peers did not offer in-person programs during that time. It was my goal during that time as dean that we would do two things. One is that we would keep the community as safe as we could. And during that time, there were students who were unhappy with some of the steps that we took, in my view, to keep the community safe. And while there were many losses in the world at large, and of course in people's families, including, I suspect, some of your own, that were not in our community. And second, we were able to operate, I think, at the maximum level of engagement with our students that was possible during that time, even as it wasn't what people hoped for. The other piece of that story that I wanted to share with you is that it was hugely expensive. And during a time when so many people were suffering so much, economically as well as personally, our alums stepped up in so many ways to support us so that we could support the technology-based transformations, so that we could support our students during a time of unusual need that they asked us to help them with, unlike in more normal times. So I wanted you to know that about the last couple of years. That doesn't so much go in a PowerPoint presentation very nicely or with a set of numbers and charts. But I hope that at least gives you a very brief sense about what the school has been about, if you've been 5 years since being here for a state of the school. So now the boring part, but then hopefully the less boring part once we get to questions. Something that I don't think is too boring is the fact that MIT has a new president, Sally Kornbluth, as I hope that all of you know. Not that I'm making anything of it, but the chair of the corporation, Diane Green, and then Sally Kornbluth, and then our own Cindy Barnhart, who's the provost of MIT, and Melissa Nobles, who's fantastic as the chancellor of MIT. And so, I don't know, maybe some people see a pattern in that, maybe they don't, maybe it's the future, maybe it's not, just saying. The other thing I would say about Sally is that she's been very vocal about the centrality of MIT's Sloan School of Management to her sense about how to her sense about how MIT needs to have impact and have impact in some new ways, how it needs to think and rethink the way that it manages a multi-billion-dollar-a-year research enterprise through, management and leadership, how it takes some of its research and ideas around energy and fusion, for instance, and other aspects of climate change to be addressed effectively out to the world in economic systems and social systems, as well as technology-based systems. It's all been hugely reinforcing for me as Dean of the Sloan School, and I'm very grateful that she is the president of MIT, in case you were wondering. I'm going to talk very briefly about faculty and about our degree programs and a little bit about external relations and global programs. We continue to have a faculty. They continue to be amazing. I thought what I would do just briefly is answer for you a question that I was asked in the height of the pandemic. I went to see an alum, and we sat outside in Providence, Rhode Island. He's an amazing guy, and I was prepared to answer all his questions about what we're doing in the pandemic. And he said, I know you're doing a bunch of stuff. I know you're doing great things. I don't care about that. I want to know what you're doing about inventing the faculty of the future that will take MIT and its Sloan School where it needs to go. And it was a great question and a reminder that we're always about the ideas made to matter, if you will. And I thought I would just do a tally of what our recently hired faculty are actually working on. And I thought that there are a couple things, to me at least, interesting in a chart like this. And so, yes, there are finance faculty who do asset management, portfolio allocation, and so on. But increasingly, people who are coming out of PhD programs in finance are working on healthcare finance and entrepreneurial finance and the search, if you could find them, for safe assets. In our applied economics group, development economics is larger than it has ever been, and that's true for the Institute's economics department as well. The digital economy looms very large for people that we've hired recently. Energy economics and organizational economics, which connects to the work of the future and the future of work, which you see on the top left here. In statistics and AI, you would expect that we're continuing to hire and growing our footprint in those areas, and we are. And as you can see on the top right, it represents both the sort of building the asset of AI, if you like, with respect to competencies, and also addressing some of the concerns that society has about the potential downsides, the social and ethical issues that relate to AI and so on. And so it was just informative to me looking back to see that that's what we have been doing, which is to a large degree, I think, what we should be doing. And no one cares that I think that we should be doing it, because faculty hiring is done entirely at the level of the individual groups of faculty, and they choose people that they think are the most exciting scholars for the future. And at the moment, these are those people. I wanted to share with you a little bit of a footprint there. We also, importantly, managed to promote some faculty to tenure. These are the faculty who were promoted this academic year. We won't take the time here to describe in detail their research, but I will say that a new president of MIT in January and then in April encountered these proposed promotions from the MIT Sloan School. And in her words, her socks were left on the floor with respect to the quality of those faculty, and that too is something that's very nice to hear if you're dean of the Sloan School. We've also hired some new faculty, as always. Most of those are at the junior level. 3 of our 4 new faculty, if you count the senior person as well, are women in this particular case. It's not true every year. And I'm especially excited that Catherine Wolfram will be joining us. She has a history in the public sector and in development economics and in energy economics that's relevant for the US, relevant for the president's agenda, MIT, well, both presidents' agendas. She has worked for the president before and is likely to do so again. And we have some retirements, and those might be people who you would recognize from your own time here. Although, as many of you know, our faculty have a very long life with respect to usefulness and inclination to stay. But eventually they do move to emeritus status, which means that they continue to be around. We stop paying them, and they keep working. They don't mind, honestly. Maybe we could back that up a bit. Okay. They are also a productive faculty in many respects. I know you want to take a quick iPhone photo here because the summertime beach season of beach reading is coming up, and you've got some possibilities here. And before too long, the fall season of holiday gift giving will be upon you all. And where else are you going to know what it is that your loved ones would be looking for but right here? All right, and some people are telling you can get them on the internet. With respect to our academic programs, I want to touch on our portfolio of programs. Again, it's going to have to be quite brief for each program. We have a growing footprint in the MIT undergraduate experience. I'm happy to see that. I don't want to take over the world with respect to MIT undergrads. About 7% of MIT undergrads major in course 15 in the Sloan School. And at this point, about 40% of undergrads at MIT at graduation have taken at least one Sloan course. That's up from the historical level. One thing that helped in this regard is parsing the majors into general management, business analytics, or finance, which helped undergrads maybe sort of brand stamp themselves in some ways that they found useful. We have 2 pre-experienced master's programs. I hope you might have known that we do. One is Master of Business Analytics, and the other is Master of Finance. They are both incredibly rigorous deep dives into those areas. They're both 12 or 18-month programs. They have incredible competition to enter the class, 16 applicants for each seat in the class at this point. And they are more international than most of our other programs. Our regular, if you will, MBA program, there are a number of things one could say about it. Our applications for MBA over the last 5 years are up. You may have heard statistics that suggest that the MBA is dead. It's not. On the other hand, as you might kind of notice looking across this chart, when I began as dean, 80% of each year's incoming master's students were 2-year MBA students. And at this point, it's 46% of our entering students are 2-year MBA students. And I have been quoted through the years as asking, what fraction of education in management ought to be 28-year-old career-switching MBAs? I mean, a significant fraction. 90, 80%, maybe not so much. And so what we've been working to do is to build a family of programs that are distinctive from each other and distinctively representative of MIT. Modern finance wasn't invented in Chicago or Philadelphia. It was invented here, and we intend to hold the high ground. And I hope that you might imagine that MIT has a footprint in business analytics, for instance. We have 2 more senior programs to the MBA. I would also just call out the diversity of the MBA program, which is different than it has been in the past. And that's the result of work on inclusion. People who are worried about whether a community is in fact inclusive choose very much as excellent applicants on the basis of their perception that this will be a place that will be welcoming to join. And we've worked very hard to be a welcoming place to join. Our efforts around diversity are not about admission, they're about matriculation. Sloan Fellows MBA and Executive MBA, 2 programs for more senior applicants, our average age 40. Very strong programs, growth in interest from applicants in both of those programs as well. And finally, an amazing PhD program that's tiny, but it is amazing. And graduates go on to top places around the world. You might want to hold any questions along those lines, but sometimes that's a place where people have some curiosities. This is a time when students have been anxious about their future with respect to opportunities in the world, in the marketplace. This is class of 2022, so it's last spring's graduates. I'll show you something about this spring where we are right now. This is here really only to tell you the very small amount of news about the sectors that our graduates tend to pursue. There are some who do consulting, there are some who do finance, that's not new. The role of tech, in quotes, as a place where our graduates are going and are interested in going has grown. But what tech means has been changing over the last 5 to 7 years. If you will, there's big tech, there's startup tech, and then there's rapidly growing entrepreneurial tech that has revenue and needs management talent to scale that entrepreneurial venture. And it's that third group that's actually probably the most interesting for our graduates right now. This year, there is understandable anxiety. If you've read the headlines, you may have heard that there are layoffs and concerns about job opportunities and so on, and I am concerned about those also. Each year, our students are anxious until they actually have an opportunity, and so there is anxiety in January, February, and March, and typically that begins to ease in April, May, and June, and that is what we're seeing this year, as we have seen it in the past. And so the red line on this chart is this year's information, and the green and the blue line are what happened each of the prior 2 years, which were quite normal years as it turned out. And the thing I have to tell you about these charts is that there's nothing in them. I mean, it looks to a first and second approximation like years past in internships, in full-time offers. Also for our Master of Finance program, this is how they're doing with respect to internships. You know, month by month as they report cumulatively, have they got an opportunity that they're interested in? And Master of Finance full-time tracking, again, in terms of offers received, there's just no news. I mean, so I'm not saying, please don't take this as investment advice for you. This is simply a reflection because you might be concerned, as we are, about how our graduates are doing. These also are opportunities, of course, that to a large degree they're creating for themselves. That's how it tends to work these days. And so it's not as if we're handing them something. It's very much co-created between hiring organizations and our graduates. Okay, quickly, I want to again say thanks. Our alums came through some difficult times and continued to support us. This is the Unrestricted Giving Annual Fund, and I just want to acknowledge that the resilience of these numbers is nothing other than a source of gratitude. Thank you. We have a partnership with the Asia School of Business in Malaysia, as some of you know. They offer a degree. We are their founding partner with respect to their development, so it's not an MIT degree. Their students do come and spend about a month here at MIT's Sloan School, and they get a certificate of participation from MIT Sloan. They had recently, their founding president had served his full term, and MIT professor Sanjay Sharma, who's well known in the MIT community and in the Sloan School community, has agreed to take on that leadership responsibility for them. Some of you may remember Sanjay from his role for MIT and open learning, edX, and so on. And he is someone who is a great choice, I think, as the incoming leader for that partner school of MIT, and it sustains our partnership. It is not only our faculty who engage in publications. This is honestly the only slide that I'm going to show you that makes me anxious every year, because I'm guessing there are people in the audience who have a book that is not up here on the slide, and I know that I'm going to hear from you, and I want to hear from you. But yes, where are the phones? So there's holiday gift-giving opportunities here also, please. These are really, I mean, not that the other books, I'm speaking into the microphone. The other books were great also, but I have read many of these, and they are wonderful, and I do recommend them to you. And it is a reflection of the thoughtfulness of the MIT community that that would be what's happening, and maybe a reflection that we would choose to celebrate it altogether. Okay, so I think that's mostly it. We do work hard to help our current students transition to alumni. You see some pictures from some of the activity along those lines. In the increasingly post-pandemic period, we are figuring out the ways some new ways and some resuscitated, pre-pandemic ways to gather in person together or to gather online together or to get the best of both. And so please use your voice in helping us understand how we can do all of that the best that we can. And with that, I would be happy to take questions. Or personal anecdotes. Or complaints. Here's a complaint. There's a microphone coming, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dean, and kudos to you and the staff, especially for what happened during the COVID time.
Thanks.
One question, especially now, it looked like graduates were 70% getting offers, but 30% were not. Are people still seeking full-time employment to the summer? Or are they pursuing entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
What's happening with the other part of the class?
Yeah, that is what they're doing. They are pursuing full-time employment. That is what happens every year. So what I was trying to communicate, and I should have made this point, is that every year, this is about where we are in this respect. Every year, among the 30% that have not either had an opportunity or chosen an opportunity so far, and so are indicating that they're not at closure, there is anxiety because every year there is that anxiety. And so if you have a child who's in the MBA program who's anxious and does not have I do not want to indicate that we don't care. There are ways that we've talked about supporting people if they need it and so on, especially with internships, which are a little bit more fraud or frothy sometimes in terms of commitment. The organizations that are hiring our graduates have a very strong track record of not reneging on offers, and so that is a comfort. But of course, that's, the world has some uncertainties. So the thing I mostly wanted to suggest is that we will continue to monitor. We do continue to assist people with finding job opportunities, of course, and we do that through the summer and sometimes into the fall. There's a really okay, so I'm going to regret doing this. I'm already regretting, and I haven't even done it yet. So some of you may care about rankings. I honestly don't really care about them very much because they don't move any needle that I care about. But if you look at the most recent US News rankings, in which, yes, we're fourth. I don't know if that's a big number or a small number, it's the number. We are ahead of Harvard and Stanford. And so, where's the foam finger? Come on. But, and forgive me, because this is no longer really a response to the question that you asked. But if you look at the usual suspect 7 schools, and if you look at where they usually show up in the rankings, it's reversed. Which is kind of a bummer, because we're fourth either way. And I'll come back and say something quickly about that. But why are Harvard and Stanford lower? It's because their students are less anxious about taking a job that might not be the perfect job. And US News changed, as they love to do, all the magazines do this, they changed the weights for the different factors. And they substantially upped the weight that they give to employment at graduation, employment within 3 months, and so on. And Stanford and Harvard don't look good on those because they're not, it's not because they don't have offers, it's because they don't have anxiety. So there's a story there, and I'm not going to tell you who the 2 schools are that are ranked the highest, but they are ranked the highest because their graduates are most anxious about taking a job, and they did. So I offer that not only as a narrow anecdote, but let's be thoughtful about attracting an amazing class. Let's be thoughtful about making sure the world knows that we are what we are, which is unlike any other school of management, because we honestly are unlike any other leading school of management. And it isn't right for everyone, but there are lots for whom it is right, and let's be that. Okay, sorry. Now I'm going to do lightning round, really quick answers to questions. Yes, please, sir. There's a microphone.
Hello, Dave.
Hi.
You told me I could call you Dave, so I'm practicing.
Can I call you Sam, though?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
No, thank you for doing the update. A difficult question to ask. I've seen the leadership change at MIT, and I've been fielding questions about your own status because you've been at the Sloan School for 16 years. So I wonder how you're thinking about potential succession plan, or what are sort of your outlook in terms of your willingness to continue to serve the Sloan School. Thank you.
Thank you. That is a difficult question. So it's true, but it's not my answer, that I serve at the pleasure of the president and provost, because I do. That is how the organization works. It's also true that I work hard on having a group of people who might be willing to serve and who understand the role of the dean well enough to fulfill it well for all of us, for you. I have expanded the number of associate and senior associate deans during my time as dean, and those are amazing people, and I'm proud of them. My own sense of the school is that it has changed a lot, not maybe in every respect for the better, but I think in many respects for the better. I've been encouraged with the new institute leadership as well. Much of what they're doing I find inspirational. I hope to contribute to it in the ways that they would wish, and I hope to do that for multiple years ahead. No, I meant as dean. Did you? All right. Anyway, fine. So let's go. There's the woman whose hand is still up here, and then we have a gentleman over here, and then we have a person in red here.
Thank you. I had a quick question about the class statistics you shared about, like, percentage of women and percentage of underrepresented minorities.
Yes.
Can you also share how the percentage of international students is now and the trends in the last few years?
Of course, yes. Thanks. The fraction of students in all of our programs that is international, we don't manage as a number in the sense that we don't maintain a quota. The Institute, by the way, does. We don't have enough time for me to tell you my views about that. But as a school, we don't. We want the best students. That's pretty much, if it wildly swung in some period of time, we'd want to understand why. Sometimes the application numbers from a particular part of the world do kind of drop, and we work to try to understand that. That's kind of how they go. So there has been change in the international student percentage, but it's really pandemic driven, and I just want you to understand it that way. So during the pandemic, the fraction of international students at MIT Sloan, which is pretty much the MBA program, that as a fraction, it dropped from about 40% to, I think, 32 or 30%, something like that. As you know, that didn't, for the most part, have to do with those applicants or admits not being able to get a visa, because we were open for business, if you will, but it did have to do with their being able to leave their own country for any of a number of reasons. We had a number of international students especially choose to defer to a subsequent class year. We did allow people to defer for up to 2 years if they wanted to do that. And so the fraction did drop. Then in the first post-pandemic period, it went through the roof, almost to 50%. Because there's the overhang in demand, and then there were the deferrals also, and that they were disproportionately international. And where we are this year is where we were in 2016 and 2017 and so on. So it has been a relatively stable number. It's been relatively stable, oops, I took it away, across all of the programs. Do you want to have a follow-up question, or does that answer what you were thinking? Okay, great, thank you. So there's a question here, yes. And a microphone.
So Jeremy Seidman, class of 03. Just curious, what's the most popular course on campus these days? Just be fun to hear. You don't have to say your own.
Do I have to tell the truth? I'm told, I don't actually measure those statistics. I don't look at them. I'm too humble. There is a long-standing Sloan School course. This is Sloan School classes, right? There's a long-standing Sloan School course that I inherited the stewardship of. I offer it jointly, or I organize it jointly with MIT's former president, Susan Hockfield. So we work as a team, the two of us. The course is called Corporations at the Crossroads. It's been here for a long time. And so she and I run that course. And it is, I'm told, the most popular course at MIT. But I have to say, I mean, what we do is bring people like you into the classroom and describe what's going on, and we have amazing people do that. So that's it. Okay, thank you. I'm told this needs to be the last question, and so you got to make it really tough, and you know.
I'll try. Thank you for being here. So I'm a Massachusetts resident, and in the last election season, I got a mailing with your face and quote on it against the millionaire's tax. And I was curious to understand what motivated you to speak out against the tax and how you think it reflects or doesn't reflect on the school.
Yes. I am going to answer the question, but I have to do a little preamble. So, you know that we had class dinners, and I didn't get, this was class dinners last night, right? Some of you were at reunion class dinners. And if you were at the hotel, I went into 4 of the different rooms, mostly the smaller rooms, more senior alums, and thanked them for coming by and so on. And in 3 of the 4 rooms, and I'm not trying to pick on the 3 people I'm going to not mention by name next, but I walk into the room, and did someone in here say how long? Sam, how long have I been dean? 16 years, right. I walk into the room, 3 of the 4 rooms, these are more senior alums, the person said, Dean Schmittlein, it's so great that you came by to see us. That was Dick Schmittlein, it wasn't me. Yeah. I know, you got a follow-up question, I know. Yeah, so the inevitable, this is not a jocular topic. What the inevitable and right follow-up question is, what's my perspective on him speaking? And the answer is that he is a tenured faculty at the MIT Sloan School of Management. MIT is serious about academic freedom and the ability of people to express their views as they would wish. And that is what he was doing. It did list his affiliation, which faculty are permitted to do as they express their view on any topic worldwide. And that, unless there is a specific apparent insight to violence that's part of the statement, is protected by that freedom. And if I'm allowed to, no, I'm really not, but I'm going to do it anyway, to editorialize for a minute. So academic freedom is under threat. And that's not the same as free speech. There are things that people could say about free speech, and we would be here way too long. But academic freedom is the ability, it's limited to tenured faculty, but the ability to retain your position and to express the academic views that you believe are true and correct and ought to be communicated to students and to the world and so on. That's what academic freedom is. Academic freedom is a university right to tenured faculty. It's not a business school decision. But it arose for American universities out of a business school. Like, why? What are we doing in business that would? But a different business school than this one had a faculty member who did research on the use of child labor. A little over 100 years ago was the research. And in particular documented in that part of the country child morbidity and mortality as a result of industrial use of child labor. And inasmuch as the trustees of that university, including someone who made his money in nickel mining, by the way, it was both in logging and in mining and in manufacturing. Children were used in all of them. So the trustees told the president, you have to fire this business school faculty member. And the president said, okay, just saying, that's what happened. So the president told the dean to fire the faculty member, and the dean refused. So the dean was fired from his dean position, and they found another dean who would be willing to fire the faculty member, and the faculty, the rest of the faculty, refused to teach their courses. So the upshot of that was, in that university, the first move to create tenure in the United States of America. the source of tenure, and I remind this to MIT's graduates, because I get to talk to them every June. Tenure isn't a reward for good behavior. Tenure is an incentive to courage. And I ask the MIT graduates, this is now not just about the Sloan School, do you feel that your ability to tell the truths in your research area are under threat? These are chemical engineers, material scientists, physics faculty, biology faculty. 2/3 of the hands in that room go up. There is more anxiety about the ability to tell the truth as you know it now than there has been. And so I am supportive of the need, within very broad limits, for faculty who are tenured faculty who have been judged to be worthy of the granting of academic freedom to use it. With that, and I'm happy to chat with you a little bit further about this, but
I'm sorry for the point of confusion.
no, that was great. I love it. Okay, all right, I have to do one more thing, and I'm sorry, I know you have other places to be. When I was announced, I think it was in this room actually, by then President Susan Hockfield as the incoming dean of the MIT Sloan School of Management, I made the mistake of saying a few words, which was fine, and then opening it up for questions from people who were just meeting me for the first time as dean of the school. And so, first question, as a trick question, honestly, was, so how do you think that your term and your agenda is going to be different from that of your predecessor? And so his predecessors were there. I mean, not today, at the time. So he said, well, the thing I can tell you today is that the first 4 letters of the dean's last name are not going to change. On that note, thank you.